Hello, and welcome to another Scarlet and Violet tournament replay analysis. I'm your host, Typhoon Carter. Today we have the underused kickoff tour, round 4, where I played Mr. Soup. Mr. Soup is a decent player. He's mostly a old gens NU, PU kind of player, but he's still a pretty solid player if he got this far. Going in this matchup, since all replays were public, I was able to look through the replays, and I had noticed that he had been using Talonflame, Serena, Graphite, Tinkaton core with generally either a water ground of their choice between Gastrodon or Quagsire. This was a really common core during the middle to latter half of underused alpha. As for balance cores, Graphite was just a really good pivot. In my last video, you might have noticed that I had struggled against Graphite a good bit, just because Parting Shot was so free. The other thing was Talonflame is a nuisance for most teams because of Flame Body and Will-O-Wisp, all that jazz. But I had realized that looking at the team structures, I realized that Gallade is actually able to shred this kind of team apart, and Gallade's a pretty decent Pokemon in underuse, even now, mostly because it got a major buff in Sharpness. For those of you who don't know what Sharpness does, Sharpness is an ability that boosts all cutting or slicing moves by its base power by 1.5 times. So for example, this means Sacred Sword, which is a move that Gallade got this generation, goes from base 90 power to base 135 power, so that means this is even more powerful than close combat. Leaf Blade goes up to around 135, very powerful, especially for a coverage move. And then you also have stuff like Cycle Cut that's a little over 100 base power. You know, just all around, this means that Gallade's moves hit really hard. Their moves have high base power, all that good stuff. And since Gallade already had a naturally high attack stat, this means that you don't need Swords Dance or any of that jazz. And so I decided to go with a Life Orb Agility Gallade set. And then you'll remember the Sandy Shock, Azumarill, Mimikyu, Staraptor. I liked that other team that I'd been using in the first round so much. It was just mostly I wanted to go for a slightly different structure. And then I have Subplot Hydreigon, very powerful mon. It was very broken. Could completely roll teams over if they're not prepared. Anyways, let's just get right into this match. First turn here, they lead off Graphite. I got my Sandy Shocks here. They Parting Shot, expected. So I get my Stealth Rocks up. Might as well get them up while they're here. And then Gallade, I double in here. I actually was doubling into Gastrodon, hoping to catch it with a Leaf Blade. They double into Serena. Here, I instantly use my Terastallization. I Terra into Fighting type because, pure Fighting defensively is a little bit better than Fighting Psychic in terms of defensive profile, because it means I don't have the Ice or the Ghost weakness. And it also means that I resist bug moves like First Impression, Neck Capping. The other big reason is so I have a stronger adaptability boosted Sacred Sword, which instantly deletes Serena, and this means that I get to keep my rocks up. This is important because I want chip on stuff like Tinkaton, and I dip out into Sandy Shocks. Now the Talonflame here goes for Will-O-Wisp, that's to be expected. And they U-turn out. I anticipated the Gastrodon switch, so I get this read right. I'm able to Earth Power them on the switch. I decide to Earth Power them again, and they go for Stealth Rocks. If it wasn't Gastrodon that was a Stealth Rock setter, it was probably Tinkaton. But here, they're in kill range, more or less, right? And they go into Talonflame so I don't get that read right. And I try to Thunderbolt the Talonflame, and I get right again. So at this point, Talonflame can't really kill me from this range, so I'm kind of stuck in a weird 50-50 situation where I need to catch either the Gastrodon or the Talonflame before, and I'm also on a timer, so they need to get this sequence completely correct. And here, you know, he's getting it right so far. And then I read the U-turn, I anticipate they go into Gastrodon, I was just like, I'm thinking, I'm clicking Earth Power no matter what, because none of the members on his team can actually switch into Earth Power. Gengar can't switch in, Grafia can't switch in, Tinkaton sure as hell can't switch in, and then Gastrodon is down for the count. So Sandy Shocks had done its job, removed a major nuisance. And Talonflame here, Brave Birds, to be expected. I go into Hydreigon. I decide to set up Substitute here because I know I can take a Brave Bird and U-turn doesn't do enough. And again, they U-turn here. I anticipated a Tinkaton switch, which makes sense for him. Logical play, I take advantage of that, I predict, and I Flamethrower because Tinkaton was, in all honesty, a fake answer to Hydreigon. Not a real answer. I Flamethrower again, and the Tinkaton is in Staraptor range, because Tinkaton only has like base 70 defense, so it's super frail. And, you know, Talonflame here kills me, whatever, and they're right in Staraptor range. I Brave Bird, they stay in, probably hoping to get a Flame Body proc, you know, which is totally valid. They don't get it. And here they're at 39% health. I Brave Bird again, and Tinkaton is basically down for the count. And that was game set match, because my opponent would not have been able to do anything against the rest of my team. Grafia would have just gotten folded by a Choice Band boost to Azumarill using Aqua Jet, and Gengar couldn't really switch in. But overall, this was a really clean game for me for the most part. My opponent just couldn't get a lot of their turns right. I think if they were able to outlast a Sandy Shock sequence, then it might have been a more interesting match, but with that being said, let's just move on to game 2. Alrighty, and we got game 2 here. I decided to bring a interesting squad here. I decided to bring Choice Specs Noivern. This is because, you know, Terra Normal Boom Burst is crazy good. And looking at his team, their main resist to Boom Burst spam is basically Copperaja. Now, I paired up Noivern with Magnezone support. The idea is that I would use Magnezone to remove like the steel types that would be able to resist it. And then I also have Hatterene as my hazard control. Palmot, who is no longer in the tier anymore since it rose up to OU for January. Again, this game took place during December. And, you know, Revival Blessing, very busted, so this meant that in case my Noivern died, I could give it a second breath of life. And Grafia, we know what Grafia does. Parting Shot, Prankster, Encore, you know, Knockoff, just good utility mon. So my two main win cons were through Hatterene, who was a max defense, max HP set with Calm Mind, Draining Kiss, Mystical Fire, and like Psyshock. And, you know, Magnezone, great support for these two Pokemon for Hatterene and Noivern in particular. The opponent here has their own Noivern, so there might be times where it could go down to a speed tie. Now, I don't know what variant they ran. It could be Specs, or it could be Heavy Duty Boots with utility. It was probably Choice Specs, but anyways, yeah, their team is very vulnerable to Noivern. Let's just go right into this. The turn 1 they lead off Slowking. I go Noivern. I immediately use Terra Normal and just start spamming Boom Burst. Here they go into Copperaja and I dip out my Noivern. I go into Magnezone, they lay down rocks, right? And my Magnezone, I use Iron Defense, so my Magnezone set was a max defense, max speed. Speed with like Iron Defense, Body Press, Thunderbolt, Flash Cannon. And I did this mostly for other steel types that were not Tinkaton. And here, this works out for me wonderfully. They superpower, so thinking that they were going to be able to beat the Magnezone 1v1, but Copperaja is very slow, that's a very important thing to remember. And here, they Terra into Dark type, trying to get out of the trap. Unfortunately, that was kind of a wasted Terra for them, in my opinion, because I feel like for them, they should have just accepted that, hey, you know what, my Copper Raja is probably screwed. Like, if you see an Iron Defense, you're probably just like, okay, yeah, I'm basically boned, so yeah, that was kind of a waste, or if they wanted to turn the Dark type, they should have done it on turn 3, but they didn't know that I was Iron Defense, so I can't necessarily blame them, but still. Anyways, so Magnezone's done its job, more or less. The Noivern here U-turns, I tried to Thunderbolt like an idiot. I really should have just Flash Cannoned here. I don't know why I didn't do that. But I'm more than content with sacking my Magnezone, just make sure Donphan doesn't have Sturdy active. And, you know, at this point, it's Noivern time. I just click Boom Burst. There's no strategic commentary to really make about this. Here, Major Speed Tie, I think. If it was not Boots, then, or if it was Choice Packs, then it really came down to this play as to whether or not he still had a chance, but if it was Boots, then it was game over anyways, and it was just a matter of playing it in range. Unfortunately, he loses that Speed Tie, and the Azumarill Aqua Jets me, still not enough to kill, and I basically take out half of their team by, like, Noivern just bodied this team so hard. And here I go into Hatterene, they Brave Bird, and I decided to start setting up CM, because I'm like, yeah, the game is basically over, pal, you know, and they U-turn, they go into their Donphan, I Drain Kiss, you know, and here, the Donphan goes for a Gunk Shot. For reference, this Gunk Shot, even though he missed, it actually didn't matter for 2 reasons. For one, Hatterene was never in danger of dying. 2, it was not choice banned. I think the Gunk Shot at most would have done like 60-70 to Hatterene, and then afterwards, since the Donphan went down, I could just easily go into I could easily use something like Profile to just harass the Talonflame with Parting Shot, just debuff it completely, and then make its attacks do nothing. And I also still had Choice Scarf Palmot with a double shock. And yeah, Talonflame is basically boned. My opponent realizes he was boned, and that was game set match. That was a pretty quick match, and Choice Specs Noivern is a menace, and I think it's only getting better now that a couple more Mons got banned from UU. But with that being said, I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.